Good morning, happy Sabbath. I am happy to be here for my second Sabbath in a row here. Last week I was here for Brian. Thanks, Brian. Supporting him when he was giving his message about, who remembers? Just kidding. It was about spending time with Jesus and finding something to do for him, for your church, for your brothers and sisters. I want to tell you something that happened last week that was really exciting for me in this very church. And I know. And one person knows exactly what I'm talking about. I came up here and I sat here to support Ryan. And I turned around and I looked to see if Orlando was still in the booth because I knew I wanted to have some slides. And I'm sitting up here in no man's land, just like it is today. Nobody here. And I turn around to peek at Orlando and there's somebody in the back waving at me, which is nice because usually, like, hey, hi, Kathy. Hey, how you doing? But this person, it was just a quick second, but it felt like a big, huge wave. And I was like, hey. And then I thought, oh my goodness, I don't know who this person is. I said, I don't know who this person is. Help. And then Karen gets up and says, it's now time to greet people, which means you have to get up out of your seat and you have to go say hello. And I don't know who this person is. So I go back there and within 3 feet, I say, are you Alicia? And she says, yes. Alicia was my dear friend when we were kids. Hi, Alicia. And I don't know if I've seen her since like 6th or 7th grade. It's been a while. Go ahead, give him the wave. Give everybody the wave. Yay, see, it's so exciting. Alicia was my dear friend when we were kids. I remember doing Pathfinders. And I remember Mr. Hillman trying to teach me how to march in the parking lot. And I remember going to your house, Carolyn, for lunches and kids go out and play. And when kids go out and play, you don't see them for a couple hours, especially way back in the 80s. And so it's so nice to see Alicia again, or whenever it was. But we spent lots of times at the Hillman's house, and it's so nice to see Alicia. And I've thought about you so many times during this week. Do you remember when we went to the Delaware Water Gap? Oh, goodness, that's like my biggest memory as a kid. Hey, Tom, nice to see you. All right, so it made me think of growing up in the church as kids. Now, Brian and I could be considered second generation, but Brian was 2 and I was 3 when my mom was baptized. So I kind of wonder if that still kind of makes us first generation because mom was going through it. But when I look out here, I see Charlie, and Charlie and I went to school together at Meadowview for a couple of years. And I know Dan was just a smidge older than me, but Dan grew up in the church. Alicia and Brian, how many of you adults, more seasoned, grew up in the church, in the Adventist church? Miriam has, Carolyn has, Kathy, Joe. Okay, there's a lot of you. Now, I was thinking of all the memories I have when I was a kid. I don't remember a single one that had to do with a sermon. Isn't that terrible? I heard you, Kathy. I agree. Because this is what when I was a kid, I would try, and I would sit there, and my mom, second row, left or right side, whatever, always here, because your attention needed to be up here. She tried her best. And I would sit there and I would say, I'm going to listen to a sermon. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. This is the Sabbath. It's going to be that I'm going to listen and hear what it is that they have to say. And I'm going to absorb it. And I'm going to make these changes. And I'm going to be a better Christian next week when I come back in. But I'll tell you, I don't know if I always listen to the little story. A lot of times speakers give you a little warm-up story. It's like they're throwing out a line and they got you with that story. And I loved that part. That part was my favorite part of sermons as a kid. And then after I heard that story, turn off, go write a note, or draw a picture, color in the circles in the bulletin, something. So what I want to do today is make it all one story. And it's based on a real story. This parable is a true story. This happened to me. And I believe the Holy Spirit was able to work with me so that I could actually write it down into a story that's more parable. Because Jesus talked in parables and it worked for him. So hey, let's give it a shot, right? All right. 2 warm-up questions for you though. Raise your hand if currently right now you have a pet. Furry, feathered, scale, any kind of pet. All right. Raise your hand if you have ever had a pet. Furry, feathered. Okay, that's good. So we're going to talk a little bit about pets today. Oh, young lady, my husband went to Holbein School. So he's a Mount Holly kid. So, and I'm just in Lumberton's. I'm right around the corner from you. All right, so my second question is, we're talking about hobbies. I like, obviously, puzzles. If you have a hobby you would like to share with just a word or two, please raise your hand and tell me your hobby. I'll start with Brian. Tell me. He likes to latch hook. He does. He's a good latch hooker. And Legos. You like to make bracelets. Very nice. You like music and playing guitar. Any other hobbies? Yes. Video games. Why not? Why not? Yeah, that's okay. They're good for, oh, Carol, yes? Okay, tutoring and teaching, very good. Still doing that, very good. That must be your God-given talent. Young man, do you have a hobby you'd like to share? No? Alicia, do you have a hobby you'd like to share? Reading, love it. Reading, yes. Eating and watching TV, uh-oh. Yes. Oh, you like to be bossy. You like to tell people what to do. That's a neat hobby. Yes, young man over here. You like to draw. Very nice. I'm sorry. Gymnastics. Very nice. Good hobbies. My hobby is doing puzzles. And so here is the parable of a puzzle. And I have some slides that are going around, so we have to wait just a moment. So we're going to keep going. Any other? I like Sudoku too. Very good. Charlie, what about you? What are your hobbies? Just one. Gardening. I love it. Tom, were you going to say something? All right. Okay. All right. We got a sharpshooter over here. And a little doo-wopping on the street. That wasn't in the middle of the 80s, though, was it? No, that wasn't in the 80s. All right, very nice. Okay, parable of the puzzle. Here we go. I'm going to be reading this to you. Oh, and also thank you for singing a Christmas song with me today. That was really nice. On a lazy and drizzly summer afternoon, a woman decided to work a puzzle. As she began to sort the pieces, straight edges here, insides there, her attention was drawn to other duties. Dinner needed to be prepped, then made. Laundry needed to be folded, then put away. And the pooch, one of the pooches, was seen with a snout full of dirt, indicating that a flower bed needed attending to also. The puzzle, partially sorted, remained on work boards and in the puzzle box. The woman decided it would have to be fully sorted the following day. With the coming of the dawn, the woman and her pets arose. The dogs rushed to the back door, ready to monitor the perimeter of the yard and to defend it against any nighttime intruders. The cat meowed impatiently and trotted toward her feeding area. The woman tended to the various morning tasks of opening the curtains, putting the dishes away, and setting out breakfast food. She barely cast a glance at the supper table and its occupying hobby. As the woman opened the door for her pups to enter, something on the floor caught her attention. Like a kernel of wheat that falls to the ground, she spied a stray puzzle piece. As she picked it up to return it to its community, she gasped when she saw the disaster. In settling down to work the puzzle the day before, she had brought a cup of cold water with her. The Sabbath prior, two dear sisters had presented a health spotlight in which the importance of getting the required amount of water was paramount to one's health and vitality. In her push to attain her daily intake, and in her distraction with household duties, she left the cup of water atop the table with the puzzle. And this should not be cause for alarm in most households, yet in this home, there resides a fuzzy feline who would paw an object for curiosity's sake. The glass lay on its side. A good number of the puzzle pieces, baptized by immersion, lay soaked on the workboard. The inquisitive Kitty was the main suspect of the treasonous act. The woman looked around for the brute. The culprit was spotted, casually relaxing atop the couch, tail softly flipping, an easy purr revving in her throat, lazy eyes looking into space with not a care on her mind. The puzzler remembered that in this world you will have trouble, and that she must be slow to become angry. She quickly decided that her attention must be fully directed on the harmed puzzle pieces. If there was any chance of restoration, all pieces needed to be tended to post haste. Unaccustomed to such a calamity, the woman ran to and fro to increase her knowledge as to which method was best to use to disrupt the swell of the cardboard puzzle pieces. To the kitchen for a dish towel and back to the table, to the kitchen for paper towels and back to the table, to the kitchen a spoon, to the kitchen a knife, to the kitchen wax paper, back to the table. Would a fan help or hinder? Should a blow dryer be used? Should she move the infected pieces to a sunny spot? A quick dry versus a natural drying time, what's the best method? Should she try to solve the puzzle immediately before the harmed parts expand beyond use? Would she really have the time needed to fully sort and fit a 1,000-piece puzzle before inflation destroyed the entire scene? Oh, if only the pieces could dry as fast as the earth beneath the Red Sea. She realized completing this puzzle would take dedicated effort and a good amount of time. It would be a lot of work, a lot more work than normal, which brought up another thought to mind. Is it worth it? She had a shelf full of puzzles in the closet. Is it worth the work and hassle to try to save this very puzzle? Even if it was her only one puzzle, it didn't cost much and it could be easily replaced. Should she just toss it? Was it worth it? The decision was fully made. She would do her best to make the most out of every opportunity. Whatever her hand found to do, she would do it with all her might. She would do her best to save the puzzle. The plan of action was simple. Separate the sheep from the goats. Separate the wet pieces from the dry. Some of the wettest ones rested on a dish towel where a paper towel blotted out the iniquity from the front and a dish towel absorbed from the back. A good measure pressed down solved many blemishes on the pieces. Some require paper towel with firm palm pressure. Some were only lightly wet and needed minimal blotting, and some could simply air dry. There were, though, about 20 that were so waterlogged that moving them from the pool of Bethesda to the resuscitation area caused them to, like the curtain of the temple, rent asunder. Tops were separated from bottoms. One piece became two. Utensils were needed to remove these especially delicate pieces to a softer and safer surface. Indents on the workboard indicate the removal of such wet pieces. For those fragile split pieces, more than pressure was needed. Elmer was called into play. There were numerous methods used to repair the soiled pieces. The puzzler had several piles in the process of healing. And one piece offered evidence that identified the feline, Jolly Rancher, as the perpetrator. This piece was delicately pierced by thin, pointy incisors. Destruction would have been the result if that piece was in either of the mouths of the hounds. The cat did not gather with the puzzler, but scattered. Enduring hardship as discipline, she patted, pushed, squeezed, and sorted as best she was able, and then began construction. Step 1, lead me in a straight path. She worked the straight edges, forming the border. Step 2, seek and ye shall find. The flawed pieces were still in the process of drying as the picture began to take shape. The task of solving the puzzle took much longer due to the process of mending, the piles in which to search, and the stages of wet to dry. But the woman patiently worked to bind them together in perfect unity. She pressed on toward the goal of completing the puzzle. Because of deep saturation, once intact pieces split during puzzle assembly. She realized that time had weakened some pieces that once looked stable. At times, only the cardboard bottom was fitted to the puzzle. The puzzler decided to indicate the marriage of bottoms to the tops using inked numbers. Some pieces were placed in the puzzle without their bottom half, and their support came from their connecting pieces. Never had the woman worked a puzzle like this. The hindrances and new hurdles made work tedious. Progress was much slower than anticipated. The gate was narrow and the road was small, but progress was made. And because the puzzler was patient with the puzzle, not wanting any piece to perish, the puzzle in time was finished. After it fully dried, it was glossed and framed. Looking at the connections, one can see and feel the pieces that are missing their bottom half, or pieces that seem to swell above their never tarnished counterparts. Looking even harder, one will find the piece with the bite marks of the inquisitive kitty. There are blemishes in the final picture, but the puzzle was completed. But to the puzzler, because of her love of puzzles and the many trials of construction, this puzzle will always have a most special place in her heart. Up here is where you'll find where the kitty ate the when you go to look at it later. This will always have a special place in my heart because of all the trials and troubles that comes with it. Now that's the story, that's the parable. Now, many times when Jesus spoke in parables, the disciples came later and said, what does it mean? So here it is, the parable of the puzzle explained. The puzzle destroyer is, of course, the evil one. He is out to drown us in sin, in fears, in trials, in shame, and in heartache. His aim is to separate, to destroy, to keep us in those piles, distracted, feeling broken and unworthy. Anything to keep us out of the hands of our Father puzzler. The destroyer's work differs among the pieces, but his aim is always the same: separation and destruction. The puzzle is you, me, all of us, our lives. The pieces are our relationships, circumstances, jobs, hobbies, and goals. Our families, our coworkers, even the random soul that crosses our path, but for a moment, to the houses we live in. These are all pieces to your individual puzzle. Some pieces fit in easily. Some pieces take time. Some pieces fit in early and some later on in life, but each piece has a place in your puzzle. And you might come across a piece that's damaged. I don't know if you guys have ever come across a piece that's damaged before, but perhaps it's a job that causes too much stress, or perhaps it's a family member who is always a taker and never a giver. Perhaps it's a friend who has hurt you. Remember that healing measures will most likely have to happen before that piece fits in your puzzle. Perhaps it's just time, or perhaps it's a conversation. Perhaps it's time for you to come up with a new place of employment, or perhaps it's time for you to set boundaries for yourself. Our puzzles, our lives are all filled with struggles. Jobs, family, and relationships can be the source of great joy, but they can also be the source of great sorrow. Remember, when you are mending pieces, there are always many ways to mend your puzzle pieces. And the method that you choose might not seem the fastest or even the best at the moment, but trust that the Father puzzler is there working on all those pieces, including yours. Now the puzzler. This, of course, is Jesus. He who loves us with an everlasting love made it his mission to save us. His path was filled with trials, troubles, and hindrances, yet he met each need individually and steadfastly continued his mission to save us, his unique puzzles. And perhaps when you think of heaven, you might look forward to learning all of the things that the Bible leads out. Maybe you look forward to snuggling with a lion or diving deep with a whale. Maybe you like astronomy and you can't wait to go see what's out there in the sky. As one who has a love for puzzles, I am curious of how God works out his puzzles. And I believe we will be blown away by his plan, his working in our lives, our puzzles. When we see those big fit pieces that fit into place, I know we are going to be amazed. But I wonder if we will be amazed even more at those small, minor pieces, how he fits them into our puzzles. Those brief relationships, those short conversations, things that are minor to us in our eyes, are they actually his big pieces? And I believe that in heaven, all of our puzzles will somehow create one big master puzzle. And when you think about God as the great puzzler in the parable of the puzzle, I hope you remember him as being permanently patient, compassionately concerned, and entirely mindful of each edge, every curve, every layer of every single puzzle piece. I hope that you know he always wants restoration, and I hope you can see the many steps, tools, and lengths that he took to rescue each piece. When he saw that cup of water spill, the sin of Adam and Eve, when he saw that his puzzle pieces were harmed, I can see him reach out and gently pick up those fractured, suffering, tattered pieces, and with the most tenderest care, do everything he could to restore them. And to the puzzler, there was never a moment of doubt. It was always worth it to save his puzzle, and you will always have a special place in his heart. Psalms 18, 16 through 19 says, he reached down from on high and took hold of me. He drew me out of deep waters. He rescued me from my powerful enemy, from my foes who were too strong for me. They comforted me in the day of my disaster, but the Lord was my support. He brought me out into a spacious place. He rescued me because he delighted in me. That's the parable of the puzzle. Amen. Our closing song is 545, Savior Like a Shepherd Lead Us. Please stand.